Okay, so my life um, before was basically a masterclass in how to be the invisible daughter. I was Iris, the other daughter, the one who existed in the shadows, while my sister, Lily, basked in the sunshine of parental adoration. Think Cinderella, but without the fairy godmother and with way more hospital grade disinfectant. Lily was everything I wasn't: popular, beautiful, effortlessly charming. She was the star of the family show, the one whose achievements were celebrated, whose birthdays were lavish affairs, whose every whim was catered to. Me? I was just Iris, the quiet one, the one who spent more time with books than people, the one who was, let's be honest, kind of forgettable. Lily, darling, my mother would gush, her voice dripping with pride, your art exhibit was simply divine, so talented, just like your father. Thank you, Mom, Lily would say, her smile radiant, accepting the praise as her due. And I'd be there, in the background, a silent observer, a ghost in my own family portrait. No one ever asked about my achievements, mostly consisting of finishing another novel and memorizing the periodic table. My birthdays were, well, they existed, usually a quick, happy birthday, Iris muttered over breakfast before everyone rushed off to celebrate Lily's latest triumph. Lily, sweetie, my father would say, his eyes twinkling with paternal affection. Your acceptance to Juilliard is incredible. We're so proud of you. Uh, Thanks, Dad, Lily would say, beaming. I couldn't have done it without you. And I'd be there, a silent echo in the room, my own dreams of maybe someday going to college, maybe even studying something I was actually interested in, relegated to the realm of fantasy, because Lily's dreams were the ones that mattered. Lily's future was the one that was planned, funded, and celebrated. It wasn't that my parents were intentionally cruel, not exactly. They were just preoccupied, so focused on Lily's brilliance, Lily's potential, Lily's everything, that they simply forgot I existed. Or maybe they just didn't care enough to remember. Iris, darling, my mother would say, her voice laced with a hint of exasperation, why can't you be more like your sister? She's so outgoing, so confident. You're so withdrawn. And I'd shrug, my silence mistaken for sullenness, my quietness interpreted as a lack of ambition. I was withdrawn, sure, when you're constantly overlooked, constantly compared, constantly made to feel like you're not good enough. What else is there to do but withdraw? So I retreated into my own world, a world of books, of history, of science, of anything that offered an escape from the reality of being the unwanted daughter, the forgotten child, the shadow in Lily's spotlight. And as the years passed, the gap between us grew wider, the silence between us deeper, the feeling of being invisible more profound, until finally I simply faded away. Then I got sick, like really sick. My life in the hospital wasn't exactly a party. Think less Grey's Anatomy drama and more eternal fluorescent lighting and the constant beeping of machines ambiance. But hey, I'm a glass half full kind of gal, or at least I try to be, so I made the most of it. Besides, what else was I going to do? Stare at the ceiling and contemplate the existential dread of being the forgotten daughter? Nah, I had books, lots and lots of books. The hospital library became my sanctuary, my escape, my happy place. I devoured everything I could get my hands on: history, science, fiction, biographies, you name it. I was like a starving person at an all you can read buffet. Except instead of food, it was knowledge. Another stack of books, Iris? Nurse Mary would say, her voice laced with a mixture of amusement and concern. You'll strain your eyes, dear. They're fine, I'd reply, already engrossed in a particularly juicy biography of Cleopatra. Besides, what else am I going to do? Watch daytime TV? Nurse Mary would chuckle, shaking her head. You're a bright girl, Iris. It's a shame. She'd trail off, the unspoken shame hanging heavy in the air. A shame I was stuck in the hospital, a shame my family never visited, a shame my life was, well, what it was. But I didn't let it get to me. I had my books, my research, my own little world that no one could touch. I learned about ancient civilizations, the rise and fall of empires, the intricacies of the human body, the mysteries of the universe. I became a self-taught scholar, a master of my own domain, even if that domain was limited to a hospital bed and a stack of library books. I even started conducting my own research, aka spending hours on the hospital's surprisingly decent internet connection. I'd read medical journals, scientific papers, historical documents, anything that piqued my interest. I was fascinated by how things worked, how the world had evolved, how humans had overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. "What are you working on now, Iris?" Dr. Lee, my mostly absentee doctor, would ask during his occasional checkups. "Just reading up on the history of medicine," I'd say, showing him some obscure article on medieval surgical techniques. "Did you know they used to think disease was caused by imbalances in the four humors?" Dr. Lee would chuckle, shaking his head. "You're a curious one, Iris. You should have been a doctor." Maybe I should have, or maybe a historian, or a scientist, or an engineer, or an explorer. The possibilities were endless in the world of books, in the realm of my imagination. And in that world, I wasn't just Iris, the forgotten daughter. I was Iris, the scholar, the researcher, the seeker of knowledge, the architect of my own destiny, even if that destiny was confined to the four walls of a hospital room. It was my destiny, and I was determined to make the most of it. Okay, so Lily's 18th birthday banquet was basically the social event of the year. Think ballroom gowns, champagne fountains, and enough caviar to sink a small yacht. The guest list was a who's who of the city's elite, the music was a live orchestra playing classical hits, and the whole thing was probably costing more than my entire hospital stay, which, let's be honest, was saying something. And me, I was stuck in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. I could picture it. The laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses, the endless stream of congratulations and well wishes for my perfect sister. "Happy birthday, Lily," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. "I hope you have a wonderful night." But my well wishes were lost in the void, swallowed by the sterile silence of the hospital room. No one had even bothered to mention the banquet to me, let alone invite me. It wasn't surprising. Not really. I was the forgotten daughter, the invisible girl, the one whose existence was an inconvenient footnote in the grand symphony of the Peterson family. I tried to distract myself, to lose myself in a book, but the words blurred on the page, the stories failing to capture my attention. The feeling of isolation, of abandonment, was a heavy weight on my chest, a suffocating blanket that threatened to smother me. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:57 p.m. Almost midnight. Almost Lily's official entry into adulthood, into a world of possibilities, of opportunities, of a future that stretched before her like an endless horizon. And me? My future was uncertain, at best. Confined to this hospital bed, my body failing, my dreams fading, my life a flickering candle in the face of an approaching storm. I closed my eyes, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down my cheek. "I wish," I whispered, my voice a broken plea lost in the sterile silence. "I wish things were different." And then something happened. A strange sensation, a tingling feeling that spread through my body, a warmth that enveloped me like a comforting embrace. The beeping of the heart monitor slowed, the rhythmic sounds fading into a gentle hum. The fluorescent lights flickered, the sterile white walls blurring into a kaleidoscope of colors. I opened my eyes, my vision clearing, my senses heightened. I was no longer in the hospital room. I was somewhere else, a place of vibrant colors, of strange sounds, of a world that seemed both familiar and utterly alien. I sat up, my heart pounding, my breath catching in my throat. I was in a forest, the trees towering above me, their branches intertwined, forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight out, creating a mosaic of light and shadow on the forest floor. The air was filled with the sounds of birdsong, the rustling of leaves, the gentle murmur of a nearby stream. I stood up, my legs shaky, my mind reeling. Where was I? What had happened? Had I died? But there was no answer, only the strange, beautiful world around me, a world that seemed to pulse with magic, with a life force that vibrated through every leaf, every stone, every breath of air. I took a step, then another, my curiosity overcoming my fear. I walked deeper into the forest, my senses alert, my mind racing. This wasn't the world I knew, the world of hospitals and sterile silence, of forgotten daughters and neglected dreams. This was something else, something new, something extraordinary. And as I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was where I was meant to be, that this was the world where I would finally find my place, my purpose, my own unique destiny. Okay, so waking up in a forest after whatever happened was a bit of a what the heck moment. I mean, one minute I'm staring at a hospital ceiling, the next I'm surrounded by trees that look like they're straight out of a Tolkien novel. Talk about a plot twist. My first thought was, am I dreaming? I pinched myself. Ouch, definitely not a dream. Looked around wildly. Nope, still in the forest. And then proceeded to have a minor internal freakout. Where was I? How did I get here? Was this some elaborate hallucination brought on by years of hospital-grade boredom? I wandered around for a bit, trying to get my bearings, which was difficult considering I had no bearings. Everything was so different. The air smelled cleaner, the sounds were sharper, and the colors seemed more vibrant. It was like someone had cranked up the saturation on my eyeballs. Eventually, I stumbled upon a small village. And that's when the, wait, something's seriously wrong here feeling kicked in. The houses were made of wood and thatch, the people were dressed in what looked like hand-sewn tunics and breeches, and there wasn't a single smartphone in sight. A true tragedy. I tried to talk to some of the villagers, but it was like speaking a different language. Not literally, they spoke some vaguely familiar dialect, but their whole mindset, their way of life was so archaic. They talked about lords and vassals, magic and mythical creatures, and their understanding of the world seemed to be stuck in, like, the Middle Ages. "Excuse me?" I asked a woman churning butter in a wooden tub. Butter, churning butter. "Do you know what year it is?" She gave me a strange look, like I'd just asked her if the moon was made of cheese. "The year of the Griffin's rise," she said, her brow furrowed. "Why do you ask?" "The Griffin's rise," I repeated, my mind drawing a blank. "Is that a calendar?" She shrugged. "It's how we mark the years. Everyone knows that." Okay, not everyone, apparently. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a different place. It was a different time. A time without electricity, without cars, without the internet. Oh, the horror! A time where knowledge was limited. Technology was primitive. And people believed in magic and dragons. Hopefully friendly dragons. I spent the next few days just observing, trying to make sense of the strange new world. And the more I saw, the more I realized just how behind they were. They had no concept of modern medicine. Their understanding of science was laughable, and their technology was basically sticks and stones. "We use herbs for healing," a village elder explained to me, showing me a collection of dried plants, "and we pray to the gods for good harvests." "Herbs are good," I said cautiously, trying not to wince at the thought of medieval medicine. "But, have you ever heard of, say, germ theory?" The elder looked at me blankly. "Germs? Are those some kind of evil spirits?" No," I said, realizing this was going to be a long process. "They're tiny little things that make you sick." The elder nodded slowly, his eyes filled with suspicion. "Evil spirits," he muttered. I knew it. Great. I was now the village crazy lady, the one who talked about invisible things that made you sick. But I didn't care. I had a feeling that my knowledge, my modern understanding of the world, was going to be a lot more valuable than I realized. And maybe, just maybe, this strange new world wasn't so bad after all. It was a challenge, sure, but also an opportunity to use my knowledge, my skills, my everything to make a difference, even if it meant explaining germ theory to people who thought tiny invisible things were evil spirits. Okay, so once the initial holy crap, I'm in a medieval world shock wore off, I started to realize something amazing. I was basically a walking encyclopedia in a land where people thought the earth was flat and bad smells caused disease. Talk about a knowledge gap. My first aha-ta moment came when little Timmy, the baker's son, fell and broke his arm. The village healer was all set to amputate. Yikes. but I stepped in with my admittedly rusty knowledge of first aid and anatomy. Whoa there, I said, gently pushing the healer's rusty saw aside. We don't need to go full on medieval on him just yet. I think I can set that bone. The villagers looked at me like I'd sprouted a second head. Set the bone? The baker gasped, his face pale. But how? Well, I said, channeling my inner Dr. House, minus the sarcasm and drug addiction. It involves splints, bandages, and a good understanding of the human skeletal system. Long story short, I managed to set Timmy's arm with a lot of wincing and a few creative swear words muttered under my breath. The villagers were amazed, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and suspicion. I was pretty sure they still thought I was some kind of witch. But hey, a witch who could fix broken bones was better than a witch who cursed your cows, right? Then came the engineering incident. The village well, their only source of water, had collapsed. The villagers were panicking, convinced it was a sign of the gods' displeasure. But I, armed with my knowledge of basic physics and a healthy dose of how hard can it be? Attitude took a look at the situation. Don't worry, guys, I said, surveying the rubble. It's not a curse, it's just bad engineering. The village elder, bless his superstitious heart, looked at me like I'd just insulted his favorite goat. Bad engineering, he sputtered. What does that even mean? It means, I said, pointing to the shoddy construction of the well's supports, that whoever built this thing didn't exactly go to engineering school. And so, with a few logs, some rope, and a lot of creative problem solving, plus a few more muttered swear words, I managed to rebuild the well, making it even sturdier than before. The villagers were ecstatic, their faith in the gods quickly replaced by a newfound faith in the weird girl who talked about engineering and physics. But my real moment of glory came during the goblin invasion. Yes, you heard that right. Goblins. Apparently, these little green guys like to raid the village from time to time, stealing their crops and generally causing mischief. The villagers were terrified, their usual defense strategy consisting of hiding in their houses and hoping for the best. Guys, I said, after witnessing their less than effective defense tactics, we can do better than this. We need a strategy. The village elder, now my biggest fan, who also maybe thought I was a demigod sent to save them, looked at me with hope in his eyes. A strategy? He echoed. What's that? It's like a plan, I explained, drawing diagrams in the dirt with a stick. We need to use their weaknesses against them, create traps, coordinate our defenses, and so, with a combination of basic military tactics, thank you, History Channel, some clever engineering, hello, tripwires and hidden pitfalls, and a lot of villager enthusiasm, who knew goblins were so motivating, we managed to fend off the goblin invasion, sending those little green guys running back to their caves with their tails between their legs. The villagers hailed me as a hero, their savior, the one who had brought them peace and prosperity. And as I basked in their admiration, their gratitude, their genuine respect, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this strange new world wasn't so bad after all. It was a world where knowledge was power, where intelligence was valued, where a girl with a curious mind and a knack for problem solving could become a legend. And that, my friends, was a world I was ready to conquer. Okay, so word of my goblin thwarting, well-building, bone-setting skills spread faster than gossip in a small town, which, let's be honest, is pretty darn fast. It wasn't long before I caught the attention of Lord Elmont, the ruler of the neighboring territory. Think less benevolent king and more gruff, battle-hardened warrior with a penchant for mead and a distinct lack of patience for courtly niceties. So, he said, his voice booming through his rather drafty castle hall, you're the girl who outsmarted those goblins, eh? And built a well that doesn't fall apart after a stiff breeze. That's me, I said, trying to maintain a respectful curtsy while subtly adjusting my tunic, which was apparently not designed for medieval-style bowing. Iris, at your service. Iris, he repeated, stroking his rather impressive beard. Well, Iris, I need someone with your unique talents, someone who can think beyond brute force and blind faith, someone who can actually come up with a plan that doesn't involve setting fire to everything within a 5-mile radius. And that's how I became Lord Elmont's advisor. It was a bit of a shock, going from village hero to advising a literal lord of the realm. But hey, I'm adaptable. Besides, the castle had a decent library, though sadly lacking in modern literature, and the food was a definite upgrade from village fare. My first challenge was dealing with Lord Elmont's ongoing feud with the neighboring Baron von Grumpy Pants. Okay, that wasn't his actual name, but it should have been. They'd been bickering over a disputed border for years. Their battles, mostly consisting of shouting insults at each other across a river and occasionally lobbing a few rotten vegetables. Not exactly the stuff of epic legends. "We need to end this feud," Lord Elmont declared, slamming his fist on the table, rattling the rather precarious stack of goblets. "Von Grumpy Pants is a thorn in my side, a blight on the landscape, he trailed off, searching for a suitably insulting analogy. "A pain in the arse?" I offered helpfully. He blinked, then grinned. "Aye, that's the one. So what do you suggest, Iris? Another well? A particularly clever trap for his prize-winning pigs?" "No," I said, tapping my chin thoughtfully. "We need to outsmart him. We need to negotiate." Negotiation, it turned out, was not a concept Lord Elmont was familiar with. He preferred the hit it with a sword until it stops moving approach, but I managed to convince him that a well-crafted treaty, with mutually beneficial terms and a few strategically placed loopholes, would be far more effective in the long run. And so, with a combination of diplomacy, something I'd learned from reading way too many historical biographies, a bit of psychological manipulation, thank you, daytime TV, and a healthy dose of common sense, a rare commodity in this world apparently, I managed to broker a peace treaty between Lord Elmon and Baron von Grumpy Pants. The disputed border was redrawn, trade routes were established, and both sides walked away feeling like they'd gotten the better end of the deal, which, let's be honest, is the hallmark of any successful negotiation. But my advising duties didn't stop there. I helped Lord Elmont improve his kingdom's infrastructure, introducing the concept of paved roads and proper sanitation, streamline his tax collection system, apparently spreadsheets were a revolutionary concept, and even reform his military training program, because marching in a straight line and shouting really loud wasn't exactly a winning strategy. Word of my achievements spread, and soon other lords and ladies were seeking my advice. I became a sought-after consultant, a whisperer of wisdom, a strategist who could turn the tide of battles and shape the destiny of kingdoms. And as I navigated the complexities of courtly intrigue, political alliances, and the occasional dragon-related crisis, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, being the forgotten daughter wasn't so bad after all. It had led me here, to this world, to this life, to a destiny I never could have imagined. And that, my friends, was a twist I was more than happy to embrace. Okay, so being an advisor was cool and all, but what I really enjoyed was getting my hands dirty, literally. I mean, who needs fancy titles and courtly intrigue when you can introduce the wonders of modern technology to a world that still thinks bathing is a once-a-year activity? My first project was the Great Plumbing Revolution. Yes, you heard that right. Plumbing. Because, let's be honest, medieval hygiene was not great. Chamber pots, open sewers, and the general, if it smells bad, just throw some flowers on it approach wasn't exactly my idea of a good time. "Lord Elmont," I said one day, as we were discussing the latest outbreak of the flux, aka dysentery, "have you ever considered indoor plumbing?" He looked at me like I'd suggested bathing a dragon in his bathtub. Indoor plumbing? What in the name of all that's holy is that? "It's a system," I explained, drawing diagrams on a piece of parchment, which thankfully was more readily available than I'd expected. "A system of pipes and things that brings clean water in and takes the other stuff out." He stared at the diagrams, his brow furrowed. "Sounds complicated," he said. "And expensive." "It'll be worth it," I assured him. Think of it. No more chamber pots, no more open sewers, no more unpleasantness. And so, with a combination of my admittedly hazy knowledge of plumbing systems, the help of a few surprisingly skilled local craftsmen, and a lot of trial and error, mostly involving leaks and unexpected geysers, we installed indoor plumbing in Lord Elmont's castle. It was a marvel of engineering, a testament to the power of human ingenuity, and my questionable memory of high school physics. The news of the magical water closets spread like wildfire, And soon other lords and ladies were clamoring for their own indoor plumbing systems. The demand for skilled plumbers skyrocketed. The economy boomed, and the general level of hygiene in the kingdom improved dramatically. Though I still had to explain the concept of hand washing to some people. Seriously, guys, it's not that hard. But I didn't stop there. I introduced the printing press. Goodbye, tedious hand copying of manuscripts. The windmill. Hello, renewable energy. And even the concept of crop rotation. Because planting the same thing in the same field year after year wasn't exactly a recipe for agricultural success. The kingdom flourished. Trade routes expanded, literacy rates increased, and the general standard of living improved significantly. I became known as the innovator, the one who brought progress and prosperity to a world stuck in the past. And as I watched the kingdom transform, the people thrive, and the future unfold before me like an uncharted map, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment, a satisfaction that went beyond any personal ambition or desire for recognition. This was my legacy. This was my contribution to this world, this time, this place that had become my unexpected home. And as I looked out at the bustling markets, the newly built schools, the smiling faces of the people whose lives I had touched, I knew that I had found something far more valuable than the family I had lost, the life I had left behind. I had found a purpose, a meaning, a sense of belonging that transcended the boundaries of blood and time. And that, my friends, was a discovery worth more than all the gold in the kingdom. Okay, so being the innovator was great for my ego and all, but it also kind of painted a target on my back. Turns out, not everyone was thrilled with my fancy new inventions and revolutionary ideas, especially not the old guard, the ones who liked things the way they were, predictable, hierarchical, and with a healthy dose of knowing your place. The biggest challenge came in the form of the Guild of Traditionalists. Think less knitting circle and more secret society dedicated to preserving the ancient ways, with a side of shadowy dealings and possibly a few assassins on the payroll. Okay, maybe I was exaggerating about the assassins, but they definitely gave off a "don't mess with us" vibe. Iris, Lord Elmont said one day, his brow furrowed with concern. I've received disturbing reports. The traditionalists are not pleased with your innovations. They see them as a threat to the established order, a disruption of the natural balance. Disruption? I scoffed, adjusting my spectacles, which, by the way, were a huge hit, though I still hadn't figured out how to mass-produce them. They call this order, where people get sick from drinking dirty water and spend half their lives copying manuscripts by hand? I call it inefficient. Lord Elmont chuckled, but his eyes were serious. Be careful, Iris. The traditionalists have influence. They can be persuasive, and persuasive they were. They started a whisper campaign, spreading rumors about my unnatural knowledge, my dangerous ideas, my suspicious lack of belief in the local deities. Okay, so I might have accidentally skipped a few temple ceremonies. Sue me, I was busy inventing the printing press. The villagers, bless their easily swayed hearts, started to doubt me. The whispers turned to murmurs, the murmurs to accusations, the accusations to, well, let's just say I had to dodge a few rotten tomatoes in the marketplace. Witch, some old crone yelled, shaking her fist at me. You're corrupting our youth with your contraptions. Contraptions? I muttered under my breath. Lady, I invented the freaking wheelbarrow. You're welcome. But it wasn't just the villagers. The traditionalists had friends in high places, nobles and advisors who were threatened by my influence, my growing power. They started to undermine my projects, delay my proposals, and generally make my life a bureaucratic nightmare. But I wasn't about to back down. I'd faced worse challenges than a bunch of grumpy old men clinging to the past. I doubled down on my efforts, working even harder to prove the value of my innovations, the benefits of progress. I organized public demonstrations of my inventions, presented detailed reports on the kingdom's improved economy and health, and even challenged the traditionalists to a public debate, which, let's be honest, was more like a TED Talk with a medieval audience. And slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The people saw the benefits of my ideas, the improvements in their lives. The lords and ladies, even the most skeptical ones, couldn't deny the kingdom's growing prosperity. its increasing influence on the regional stage. My reputation as a strategist, an innovator, a visionary spread beyond Lord Elmont's territory. Kings and queens from distant lands sent emissaries seeking my advice, my knowledge, my unique perspective. I became a sought-after consultant, a whisperer of wisdom, a shaper of destinies. And as I navigated the complexities of international relations, trade agreements, and the occasional interdimensional portal mishap, don't ask, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, a quiet triumph over those who had tried to silence me, to discredit me, to hold me back. I had proven them wrong. I had shown them the power of progress, the value of knowledge, the potential of a girl with a curious mind and a determination to make a difference. And that, my friends, was a victory worth more than any title, any reward, any recognition. It was the victory of a girl who had once been invisible, but who had now become a force to be reckoned with. A strategist whose influence spanned empires, a legend in the making. Okay, so turns out this medieval world wasn't completely devoid of modern conveniences. I mean, they didn't have Wi-Fi. Tragic, I know, but they did have magic. And not just the pull a rabbit out of a hat kind of magic. We're talking full-on alter the fabric of reality kind of magic, which, was pretty cool. My magical BFF was Eldrin, the regional wizard. Think less Gandalf the Grey, and more eccentric old dude with a penchant for dramatic flair and a wardrobe that could rival a peacock. We bonded over our shared love of knowledge, though his was more of the ancient scrolls and mystical incantations variety, while mine was more scientific method and Wikipedia. Iris, my dear, Eldrin said one day, his voice booming through his magically enhanced and surprisingly well-ventilated tower. I have something to show you. Something extraordinary. He led me to a shimmering pool of water, its surface rippling with an otherworldly light. This, he said, his voice hushed with awe, is a scrying pool. It allows us to glimpse into other worlds, other realities. Other worlds? I repeated, my curiosity piqued. Like parallel universes? Alternate timelines? Eldrin chuckled, his eyes twinkling. Something like that, but this particular vision? It concerns you, Iris? Your past, your origins? He gestured towards the pool, and the water swirled, the images shifting, resolving into a scene that made my heart skip a beat. It was my old hospital room, the sterile white walls, the beeping machines, the empty chair beside the bed. But it wasn't empty anymore. My parents were there, their faces etched with worry, their eyes red-rimmed with tears. Iris, my mother sobbed, clutching a worn teddy bear, the one I'd had since childhood, the one they'd never bothered to bring me before. Oh, Iris, where are you? My father, his usually stoic expression crumpled with grief, paced the room, his voice a broken whisper. We were so blind, so focused on Lily. We never... He couldn't finish the sentence, his voice choked with emotion. I watched them, my heart aching, a strange mix of sadness and detachment washing over me. They were grieving, yes, but it was a belated grief, a regret that came too late, a realization of their neglect only after I was gone. The scene shifted again, showing glimpses of their frantic search. The hospital corridors, the police station, the missing posters plastered on every lamppost. They were looking for me, yes, but it was a search driven by guilt, by the weight of their own failures, not by the love I had always craved. Eldrin, sensing my emotional turmoil, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. It is a difficult truth to witness, Iris, he said, his voice gentle, but it is also a necessary one. It allows you to understand, to accept, to move on. And he was right. Watching my parents' belated grief, their desperate search, didn't evoke anger, not anymore. It evoked a kind of understanding. They were flawed, imperfect, blinded by their own expectations and ambitions. They had failed me, yes, but they were also products of their own experiences, their own limitations. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was sad. Sad for the love I had never received, the connection I had always craved. But I was also grateful. Grateful for the life I had now, the world I had found, the people who valued me. the opportunities that stretched before me like an uncharted map. I watched the vision fade, the shimmering water returning to its tranquil state. I looked at Eldrin, my eyes filled with a newfound clarity. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady, "for showing me this, for helping me understand." He smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and wisdom. "You are strong, Iris," he said. "You have overcome much, and you have a bright future ahead of you, a destiny that is yours to shape." And as I walked out of the tower, the sunlight warm on my face, the wind whispering through the trees, I knew that he was right. I had found my place, my purpose, my own unique path. And the past, with all its pain and neglect, was just that. The past. A chapter that had closed, a story that had ended. And I, Iris, the forgotten daughter, the unwanted child, was finally free to write my own story. A story of resilience, of strength, of a woman who had found her true home, her true family, her true self, in a world that had embraced her, valued her, and given her the chance to shine. Okay, so after the whole scrying pool and parental guilt trip incident, I realized something important. My life wasn't about them anymore. It wasn't about proving them wrong, or seeking their approval, or even understanding their neglect. It was about me. About building a life that was meaningful, fulfilling, and, maybe a little bit legendary. I continued to work with Lord Elmont, who, by the way, had become something of a father figure to me, though he'd probably deny it with a gruff nonsense and a swig of mead. But my focus shifted. I wasn't just interested in winning battles and improving infrastructure anymore. I wanted to create something lasting, something that would benefit not just the current generation, but generations to come. "Lord Elmont," I said one day as we were discussing the latest trade agreement with the neighboring kingdom, who, thankfully, were not ruled by anyone named Von Grumpy Pants. "I have an idea, a rather ambitious idea." He raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of amusement and curiosity. "Ambitious, eh? Does it involve plumbing? Because I'm still not entirely convinced about those water closets." "No, no plumbing this time," I assured him. "This is about education. I want to establish schools, libraries, institutions of learning, where everyone, regardless of their social standing, can have access to knowledge." He looked at me, his eyes widening. "Schools? But why? Most people can't even read." "Exactly," I said, my voice filled with passion. "Knowledge is power, Lord Elmont. It's the key to progress, to innovation, to a better future for everyone." And so, with Lord Elmont's support and a hefty chunk of his treasury, I set about building my legacy. We established schools in every town and village, hired teachers, who, admittedly, needed a bit of training themselves, and created libraries filled with books. Thankfully, the printing press was a huge success. It wasn't easy. There was resistance from the traditionalists, who, predictably, saw education as a threat to their power, skepticism from the nobles, who thought learning was only for the elite, and general confusion from the common folk, who were more accustomed to learning practical skills than reading and writing. But I persevered. I organized public demonstrations of the benefits of literacy, offered free classes for adults, and even wrote a few children's books myself, complete with colorful illustrations and talking animals. And slowly, but surely, the tide began to turn. People started to see the value of education, the opportunities it opened up, the power it gave them to shape their own destinies. The kingdom flourished, not just economically, but intellectually. New ideas blossomed, innovation thrived, and the general level of knowledge and understanding soared. I became known as the Enlightened One, the one who had brought knowledge and wisdom to the masses, the one who had sown the seeds for a brighter future. But my greatest achievement wasn't the schools or the libraries or even the talking animal books. It was the community I built, a community of scholars, of thinkers, of innovators, of people who shared my passion for learning, my belief in the power of knowledge. We gathered in my newly built Academy of Enlightenment, a fancy name for a really big library with a coffee shop, debated ideas, shared discoveries, and supported each other's dreams. And within that community, I found something I had never expected: a family. Not a family of blood, but a family of choice. A group of people who accepted me, valued me, loved me for who I was. not for who they wanted me to be. I found love too, not with a prince or a knight, though I did have a few admirers, but with a fellow scholar, a brilliant young woman named Lyra, who shared my passion for history and my love of bad puns. We built a life together, a partnership based on mutual respect, intellectual curiosity, and a shared love of exploring the mysteries of this world and beyond. And as the years passed, as I watched the kingdom thrive, the community grow, and my own happiness blossom, I realized that I had achieved something far greater than revenge, far more meaningful than proving my old family wrong. I had found my place, my purpose, my own unique legacy. I had become a legend in my own right, not because of my bloodline or my social standing or any preconceived notions of who I should be, but because of who I chose to be. I was Iris, the forgotten daughter, the unwanted child, the girl who had been cast aside, left to fade away in the sterile silence of a hospital room. But I was also Iris, the scholar, the innovator, the strategist, the leader, the friend, the lover, the woman who had defied expectations, overcome adversity, and built a legacy that would last for generations to come. And that, my friends, was a triumph worth more than any crown, any kingdom, any recognition. It was the triumph of the human spirit, the resilience of the heart, the unwavering belief in the power of knowledge, the enduring strength of a girl who had found her own way, her own voice, her own destiny, in a world that had embraced her, challenged her, and ultimately allowed her to become the best version of herself.